Good morning, I'm Bree Driscoll, and here's your Spectrum News in 90. An Israeli military official says Israel has captured the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing. It's a vital entry point for much-needed aid. The White House says the move is not necessarily the start of a major offensive. This after Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposal by Egypt and Qatar. Negotiations are continuing today. Severe weather striking several states across the country. In Oklahoma, a powerful tornado touched down last night about 40 miles outside of Tulsa. Emergency crews say the twister damaged dozens of homes as well as a nursing home. And parts of Texas are dealing with the aftermath of severe flooding that claimed 3 lives.
What's happening here is a disgrace.
The Trump trial continues today after witness testimony wrapped on Monday. Prosecutors say Trump was part of an illegal conspiracy to undermine the integrity of the 2016 election. Trump denies the allegations and the fraud charges. Last night's Met Gala featured this year's theme, The Garden of Time. The theme is tied to the museum's spring exhibition opening on Friday. Many celebrities don dresses and suits studded with florals and unique fabrics. The gala raises money for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute. Those are your headlines. Now here's a look at your weather on the ones.
I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez, and today we continue with a risk of severe storms. These are going to be in parts of the Midwest, moving eastward with a threat of tornadoes today. Meanwhile, we also still have not only windy weather in the Rockies, but snow. Now, these areas of rain, the thunderstorms are going to be moving eastward tonight across Ohio toward West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Rain is expected in New York City. Meanwhile, very hot in Florida.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Spectrum News. I'm Bree Driscoll. Today is Tuesday, May 7th. Our top story: an Israeli military operation is underway in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Israeli forces taking over the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. The White House says it's not necessarily the start of a major offensive. This after Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposed by Egypt and Qatar. Negotiations are continuing today. Spectrum's Angie Gonzalez has the latest from Washington.
Early this morning, Israel's defense forces reported rocket fire coming from inside southern Gaza. Hours earlier, Palestinian officials say multiple people, including women and children, were killed during a flurry of Israeli airstrikes on Rafah. Israel says the airstrikes and a move to seize control of the Rafah crossing inside Gaza are ways they can pressure Hamas to meet its demands for a ceasefire. Aid organizations fear the closure of the Rafah crossing will only worsen inside the Palestinian territory.
The ball is now in the court of Israel, and Netanyahu is going to have to bring this deal to his cabinet and get it approved.
As negotiations between both sides continue in Qatar today, the back and forth causing confusion for those in Gaza who initially celebrated news that Hamas had agreed to a ceasefire Monday. Protesters in Israel are urging Israel's leadership to accept the offer Hamas agreed to and get the hostages remaining in Gaza home. Right now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet are not on board.
He wants a ceasefire and a hostage return, but not a permanent ceasefire. Hamas wants a prisoner exchange, hostage return, and a permanent ceasefire.
In the meantime, thousands of those living in parts of Rafah under evacuation orders have been trying to leave the area, but with new bombing overnight, some question strikes are the start of a major ground offensive into Rafah, a move the White House has made clear it opposes. Bree?
And Angie, in Washington today, President Biden will be taking part in a ceremony at the Capitol to honor victims of the Holocaust. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is going to be a bipartisan event. Joining President Biden will be both Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson and House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. Now, the president will deliver the keynote address at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum's annual Days of Remembrance ceremony, honoring the memory of the 6 million Jews killed during the Holocaust. He's also going to be announcing several new actions that his office is taking counter anti-Semitism here in the United States. These new actions, of course, Bree, are significant because of the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Bree, it's also relevant because of the ongoing in the world and concerns from Jewish students, at least here in the U.S., that they have felt unsafe at their schools during this time. Bree?
Right, Angie Gonzalez, thank you very much. Pro-Palestinian protesters rushed and upended a police barrier at MIT yesterday. The university had ordered protesters to clear the encampment by early afternoon. Police then fenced off the area with about a dozen tents remaining inside until additional protesters arrived and broke past the barricades. Last night, dozens of protesters remaining at the encampment in a calmer atmosphere, listening to speakers and chanting before taking a pizza dinner break. New York police arrested 27 pro-Palestinian protesters yesterday ahead of the hottest night in fashion. Hundreds of demonstrators marched across New York City earlier in the day as police put up barricades near the Met Gala, with some protesters seeing a tempter for those institutions to cut financial ties with Israel. Former President Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial continues today. Yesterday, 2 Trump Organization employees walked jurors through financial documents central to the case. Deborah Tarasoff explained how checks were cut to fixer Michael Cohen in 2017. Jeffrey McConney testified about how Cohen's payments were listed in Trump's financial documents. Prosecutors say they need roughly 2 more weeks to make their case. Powerful storms tearing across the country, bringing with them tornadoes, heavy rain, and large hail. In Oklahoma, a powerful tornado striking about 40 miles outside of Tulsa. Emergency management says the twister downed trees and power lines and damaged dozens of homes and buildings, including a nursing home. Emergency crews say no one was seriously injured. Spectrum News anchor Jenna Enoch joins me now with more. Jenna, where are we seeing the most damage?
Oh, Bree, that is tornadoes, and I want you to take a look at this video. A powerful tornado touched down late Monday night in a city about 40 miles outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was all caught on video. The sheriff's office in Osage County says 1 person is dead after the tornado touched down. Now officials are conducting search and rescue in that area while navigating some dangerous conditions like downed power lines, gas leaks, and debris, which are making the roadways dangerous. According to Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management, the twister damaged dozens of homes and a nursing home. Residents were evacuated from that damaged nursing home and no injuries that required hospital care were reported. The National Weather Service will likely be there today to survey the damage and determine wind speeds from that tornado. About 58,000 people have lost power so far across parts of Oklahoma and Missouri as these severe storms sweep through the states. The risk continues for severe thunderstorms. Bree, back to you.
Jenna, thank you very much. Embattled airplane manufacturer Boeing is facing yet another inquiry into its assembly practices. The FAA announcing a new investigation yesterday after the company voluntarily reported workers at its South Carolina plant had falsified inspection records on some of its 787 planes. Despite this, Boeing engineers said the misconduct did not pose an immediate safety issue. No planes have been taken out of service so far. Just ahead on Spectrum News, accessing child care is causing dilemmas for parents across the country. We'll take a closer look just ahead.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
From coast to coast, you've seen us around. We live and work in the communities we serve. Our commitment runs deep. We're invested here, creating good jobs and supporting small businesses, many of which we're proud to call customers. You count on us to keep you connected to what matters most. And we're committed to delivering you the best internet, TV, and mobile service. We're Spectrum, connecting the places we all call home.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, streaming live on your smart TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News Plus, local stories, connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
I'm meteorologist Julie Marquez with an update on what we're talking about today. We are watching the Midwest for thunderstorms, some severe as they move eastward this afternoon through tonight. In the Rockies, it's windy. There is more snow, and the rain is moving eastward. Parts of the Northeast will have areas of rain tonight and tomorrow. Let's take a look at all of the storm reports over the last 24 hours. A lot of that was wind and also snow for parts of the Rockies and parts of the West. But right here in the central part of the country is where we had severe storms yesterday and overnight. And some of those were tornadoes. So they'll be cleaning up in parts of Oklahoma, certainly Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. That rough weather's been moving eastward, and our risk of severe storms during the afternoon and tonight will be centered in the Midwest. Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis, down to about Memphis. And the risk of severe storms is a level 3 out of 5. And this covers a lot of Ohio, including around Columbus, areas near Dayton too, Louisville up to Indianapolis. Watch out for the threat of tornadoes. Large hail, damaging wind also possible here, and this will ramp up during the afternoon and into the evening hours. So you can certainly see the storm system here. Look at all that rain, Minneapolis into Milwaukee and Chicago, St. Louis too. Areas of rain will be covering parts of Kentucky into West Virginia. This is a look at tonight into tomorrow. Still more thunderstorms around Columbus. Rain is moving into Pittsburgh, then eventually into Philadelphia and into New York City tonight and Wednesday. Today in Milwaukee, 66 degrees with showers and storms. Chicago, stormy weather and a high of 75. Des Moines is drying out. 75 degrees today, but Indianapolis will have Kansas City after a rough night will be getting drier. Some sunshine returns with high 77 and a low of 57 degrees tonight.
If you're just joining us or heading out the door, here's a look at what you need to know. An Israeli military official says Israel has captured the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing. It's a vital entry point for much needed aid. The White House says the move is not necessarily the start of a major offensive. Severe weather striking several states. Emergency crews in Oklahoma say a massive twister damaged dozens of homes. Parts of Texas are dealing with the aftermath of severe flooding. And officials delaying Boeing's Starliner launch nearly 2 hours before a historic liftoff. They say an oxygen valve needs to be fixed before the astronauts can take off. And that's a look. Russian President Vladimir Putin sworn in again today for his 5th term as the country's president. The U.S. and most European nations boycotted the ceremony, with many Western governments condemning his re-election as both unfair and undemocratic. Putin won in a landslide victory in March, only weeks after his most prominent political opponent, Alexei Navalny, had died in prison. An American soldier has been arrested in Russia, accused of stealing from a longtime girlfriend. U.S. authorities say Staff Sergeant Gordon Black was stationed in South Korea. Black, who's married, was in the process of going back home to the U.S., but instead traveled to Russia to visit a longtime girlfriend. Officials say the soldier was arrested in Russia last week on charges of criminal misconduct. From long wait lists to high costs, many parents across the country have difficulty accessing childcare. Spectrum's Allison Bruner breaks down the challenges.
Before becoming a full-time mom, Kelly Coble worked doing reading support. Shortly after learning she was pregnant with her oldest, she started searching for childcare.
We don't have family around. We didn't have any unpaid support.
She could not find any openings within a reasonable distance from where she lived.
Every child care center I contacted had a wait list of at least 4 to 6 months, I want to say, and could not guarantee anything.
She decided to leave her job and stay home with her baby. A few years later came her second pregnancy. She was hoping this time she could find childcare, but it only had grown more expensive.
After looking at 2 or 3 different places just off of price, I knew I couldn't do it.
Callie is not alone. Emily Amundsen, Secretary of the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families, says many parents have had to leave jobs or say no to career prospects because of a lack of available or affordable childcare.
I think talking about this, but there are also a lot of states that have made additional investments at the state level that help make it easier for parents to find childcare and for parents to pay for childcare.
Amundsen wants to assure parents and daycare providers that there are people at the local and state level advocating for increased child care funding and reviewing how we can fix this problem. Kelly has started using any spare time she has outside of caregiving to volunteer with the nonprofit Milwaukee Succeeds, which aims to make early childhood education available to all. While she misses her career, she knows she's lucky to even have the option to stay home with her children. It's a choice many don't have.
I'm very fortunate that my husband has stable income and we're able to make it work. However, even so, he's working upwards of it really difficult.
A parent hoping for better, getting involved to fix the child care system. In Milwaukee, Allison Bruder, Spectrum News.
A new report finding just over a decade from now, Social Security and Medicare won't be able to fully pay benefits. According to the Entitlement Program's trustees' annual report, if Congress doesn't act fast to address the pending shortfalls, there will be fewer options. The report says the combined Social Security trust funds are expected to be exhausted in 2035. Now, the good news is this is 1 year later than previously estimated. Meanwhile, Medicare funds are expected to be able to cover scheduled inpatient hospital benefits until 2036. Last night, the Minnesota Timberwolves were missing a key player in their lineup. Game 2 of their Western Conference semifinal series against the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets, and for good reason. Rudy Gobert early yesterday. High winds in Colorado disrupted air travel, so getting him back in time for the game was not possible. Gobert played a key role in the Wolves' 106-99 win in Game 1. Congrats to the new mom and dad. Ahead on Spectrum News, we take a look at the oldest fantasy sports league in the entire world. That's just ahead.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for kids and teens. These programs cover doctor's appointments, hospital visits, prescriptions, shots, and more. As parents, we get peace of mind knowing that our children are covered if they are sick or get injured. You may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if you've applied in the past. Enrollment is always 877-KIDS now, paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
So, we learned about Spectrum's advanced Wi-Fi. We talked about Spectrum Internet, state-of-the-art security features. But today, you're gonna learn something different because our guest is a legend. He's literally shaped the way we think about the internet. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We know that Spectrum delivers the most reliable internet speeds.
Woo! The most reliable internet speeds. You're not gonna find that in a book.
I wrote a book about it.
You don't need to read it, because you just heard it.
Want the most reliable internet speeds? You want Spectrum One.
I'll be here to hear what's on your mind. Take this time to talk and get it right. You know I'll be there all your life. When you need me, I'll be by your side.
Little everyday age drinking can make a big difference in a child's life.
An answer to one of society's biggest questions may be found in the youngest minds. Does poverty impact a child's development, their performance in school? The hypothesis that mothers who have access to cash raise babies with stronger brain development.
The basis of the baby's first year study is really to understand whether providing economic support would change children's trajectories.
Exploring your health, budgeting for brain development, available on all your favorite devices.
Meteorologist Julie Marquez with an update on Hurricane Preparedness Week. A reminder that here at Spectrum News we will out hurricane season, which begins on June 1st. You can watch us here on TV, you can watch us on the app, you can read more stories on our local websites, so we'll have a lot to talk about, of course, during hurricane season. We want to focus on the potential impacts, so regardless of the storm size or the category of a hurricane, we want to focus on impacts to regions and cities, what you are going to prepare for if there is a threat in your area. Remember, deadly hazards can occur outside of the forecast cone, so don't just concentrate on the cone, but we want to focus on the potential impacts when we get into hurricane season.
Tell me when you're ready.
Good morning. I am Josh Robin. You're watching special coverage on Spectrum News. It is now 11:51 in the nation's capital, where President Joe Biden is about to deliver the keynote address at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum's day. Let's listen in.
Thank you, and please. Thank you, Stu Eisenstadt, for that introduction, for your leadership in the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. You're a true scholar and statesman, and a dear friend. Speaker Johnson, Leader Jeffries, members of Congress, and especially the survivors of the Holocaust. My mother here, she'd look at you and say, God love you all. God love you all. Abe Foxman and all other survivors who embody absolute courage and dignity and grace are here as well. During these sacred days of remembrance, we grieve. We give voice to the 6 million Jews who were systematically targeted and murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators during World War II. We honor the memory of the bravery of heroes who stood up to Hitler's unspeakable evil, and we recommit to heading and heeding the lessons that one of the darkest chapters in human history, to revitalize and realize the responsibility of never again. Never again, simply translated for me, means never forget. Never forget. Never forgetting means we must keep telling the story. We must keep teaching the truth. We must keep teaching our children and our grandchildren. And the truth is, we're at risk of people not knowing the truth. That's why growing up, my dad taught me and my siblings about the horror of Shoah at our family dinner table. That's why I visited Yad Vashem with my family as a senator, as vice president, so they could see and bear witness to the perils of indifference, the complicity of silence in the face of evil that they knew was happening. Germany, 1933, Hitler and his Nazi party rise to power by rekindling one of the world's oldest forms of prejudice and hate, anti-Semitism. His rule didn't begin with mass murder. It started slowly across economic, political, social, and cultural life. Propaganda demonizing Jews, boycotts of Jewish businesses, synagogues defaced with swastikas, harassment of Jews in the street and in the schools, anti-Semitic demonstrations, pogroms, organized riots. With the indifference of the world, Hitler knew he could expand Jews from Germany to annihilate Jews across Europe through genocide, the Nazis called the final solution. Concentration camps, gas chambers, mass shootings. By the time the war ended, 6 million Jews, 1 out of every 3 Jews in the entire world, were murdered. This ancient hatred of Jews didn't begin with the Holocaust. It didn't end with the Holocaust either, or even after our victory in World War II. This hatred continues to lie deep in the hearts of too many people in the world, and it requires our continued vigilance and outspokenness. That hatred was brought to life on October 7th in 2023. On a sacred Jewish holiday, the terrorist group Hamas sensed the Holocaust. Driven by ancient desire to wipe out the Jewish people off the face of the earth, over 1,200 innocent people, babies, parents, grandparents, slaughtered in their kibbutz, massacred at a music festival, brutally raped, mutilated, and sexually assaulted. Thousands more carrying wounds, bullets and shrapnel from the memory of that terrible day they endured. Hundreds taken hostage, including survivors of the Shoah. Now, here we are, not 75 years later, but just 7.5 months later. And people are already forgetting. They're already this terror. It was Hamas that brutalized Israelis. It was Hamas who took and continues to hold hostages. I have not forgotten, nor have you, and we will not forget. And as Jews around the world still cope with the atrocities and trauma of that day and its aftermath, we've seen a ferocious surge of anti-Semitism in America and around the world. Vicious propaganda on social media. Jews forced to keep their hide, their keepers under baseball hats, tuck their Jewish stars into their shirts. On college campuses, walking to class. Anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic posters, slogans calling for the annihilation of Israel, the world's only Jewish state. Too many people denying, downplaying, rationalizing, ignoring the horrors of the Holocaust. And October 7th, including Hamas's appalling use of sexual violence to torture and terrorize Jews. It's absolutely despicable, and it must stop. Silence. Silence and denial can hide much, but it can erase nothing. Some injustices are so heinous, so horrific, how hard people try. In my view, a major lesson of the Holocaust is, as mentioned earlier, was not inevitable. We know hate never goes away, it only hides. And given a little oxygen, it comes out from under the rocks. We also know what stops hate. One thing, all of us. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs described anti-Semitism as a virus that survived and mutated over time. Together, we cannot continue to let that happen. We have to remember our basic principles as a nation. We have an obligation. We have an obligation to learn the lessons of history so we don't surrender our future to the horrors of the past. We must give hate no safe harbor against anyone. Anyone. From the very founding, our very founding, Jewish Americans, who represent only about 2% of the U.S. population, have helped lead the cause of freedom for everyone in our nation. From that experience, we know scapegoating and demonizing any minority is a threat to every minority and the very foundation of our democracy. So in moments like this, we have to put these principles that we're talking about into action. I understand people have strong beliefs and deep convictions about the world. In America, we respect and protect the fundamental right to free speech, to debate and disagree, to protest peacefully, and make our voices heard. I understand that's America, but there is no place on any campus in America, any place in America, for anti-Semitism or hate of kind. Whether against Jews or anyone else. Violent attacks, destroying property, is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. And we are not a lawless country. We're a civil society. We uphold the rule of law. And no one should have to hide or be brave just to be themselves. To the Jewish community, I want you to know, I see your fear, your hurt, and your pain. Let me reassure you, As your president, you're not alone. You belong. You always have and you always will. Jewish people, the security of Israel, and its right to exist as an independent Jewish state is ironclad, even when we disagree. My administration is working around the clock to free remaining hostages, just as we have freed hostages already, and will not rest until we bring them all home. My administration, with our second gentleman's leadership, has launched our nation's first national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. That's mobilizing the full force of the federal government to protect Jewish communities. But we know this is not the work of government alone or Jews alone. Americans, to stand united against anti-Semitism and hate in all its forms. My dear friend, who became a friend, the late Elie Wiesel, said, quote, "One person of integrity can make a difference." We have to remember that, now more than ever. Here in Emancipation Hall, the U.S. Capitol, among the towering statues of history, is a bronze bust of Raoul Wallenberg. Born in Sweden as a Lutheran, he was a businessman and a diplomat. While stationed in Hungary during World War II, he used diplomatic cover to hide and rescue about 100,000 Jews over a 6-month period. Among them was a 16-year-old Jewish boy who escaped a Nazi labor camp. After the war ended, that boy was studying in America. He came to New York City penniless, but determined to turn his pain into purpose, along with his wife, also a Holocaust survivor. He became a renowned economist and foreign policy thinker, eventually making his way to this very Capitol on the staff of a first-term senator. That Jewish refugee was Tom Lantos, and that senator was me. Tom and his wife Annette and their family became dear friends to me and my family. Tom would go on to become the only Holocaust survivor ever elected to Congress, where he became a leading voice on civil rights and human rights around the world. Tom never met Raoul, who was taken prisoner by the Soviets, never to be heard from again. But through Tom's efforts, Raoul's bust is here in the Capitol. He was after Winston Churchill. The Holocaust Museum here in Washington is located on a road in Raoul's name. The story of the power of a single person to put aside our differences, to see our common humanity, to stand up to hate, and its ancient story of resilience from immense pain, persecution, to find hope, purpose, and meaning in life. We try to live and share with one another. That story endures. Let me close with this. I know these days of remembrance fall on difficult times. We all do well to remember. These days also fall during the month we celebrate Jewish American heritage. A heritage that stretches from our earliest days to enrich every single part of American life. Great American, great Jewish American, named Tom Lantos used the phrase, "The veneer of civilization is paper thin." We are its guardians, and we can never rest. My fellow Americans, we must be those guardians. We must never rest. We must rise against hate, meet across the divide, see our common humanity, and God bless the victims and survivors of Shoah. May the resilient hearts, the courageous spirit, and the eternal flame of faith of the Jewish people forever shine their light on America and around the world. Pray God. Thank you all.
Talk about what he called the vicious surge of anti-Semitism in the United States. Biden was marking International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Biden also talked about what he termed the heinous attacks of Hamas on October 7th in Israel, which killed 1,200 people and involved sexual violence. That, of course, unleashed this ongoing war. Joining me now, Spectrum News Washington, D.C. reporter Daniel Grimes and Spectrum News political anchor Tim Boyum. And Daniel, we'll start with you. The speech was about the danger of being a Jew in America and the world today, but the backdrop, of course, was this war in the Middle East. How did Biden thread both?
Well, the president really said that, listen, people are already forgetting about the October 7th Hamas attack and, of course, the 6 million Jews that were murdered during the Holocaust. And the president said, we can't forget either. Of course, the October 7th attack was the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. And so here in the U.S. that we cannot forget either incident, Josh.
And Tim, certainly the Biden campaign is concerned that this very old strife in the Middle East could affect his re-election chances. But like many things about this Palestinian-Israeli conflict, it's not so simple. For one, the polling shows that even among young voters who may fault Biden on aiding Israel, this isn't near the top of the list.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, there's a backdrop of these protests where most people think that it's all these college students out there. But as we saw in North Carolina, you know, I was watching a lot of the video. A lot of the people that were protesting weren't even students in the first place. There was a lot of older people there, people that weren't even students. But you're right. This is a complicated issue. And frankly, no matter the age, there's a lot of people that will not even know what the president said today. May not be paying as close attention to this. There's a salacious trial going on in New York City right now that we were talking about offline. So here in North Carolina, people talked about his age. They're concerned about student loans. They're concerned about their finances, you know, grocery prices. And this is one of the issues, but for a lot of people, it's not at the top. But the president trying to, you know, toe that line here of showing support for Israel, but also, you know, worried about these folks that are protesting and the protests that we see at campaign events that he's held across the country, too.
And Daniel, there were more officials than just Biden there. Can you briefly tell us who else we have seen in the Capitol speak about this?
Yeah, we heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson and the Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, both of them again reiterating that this anti-Semitism is a bipartisan concern. Of course, the House last week overwhelmingly passed that anti-Semitism bill that expanded the definition of anti-Semitism. Now, the highest-ranking Jewish official, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, has not said, and the Senate are both concerned about the rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses across the country, Josh.
Tim, very briefly, I wonder if there has been discussion of anti-Semitism in the race for governor in North Carolina. That's a high-profile race in a swing state.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the biggest ones. And the Democratic candidate is Jewish. The Republican has been criticized for making statements that were considered anti-Semitism by Democrats. So it's going to be an issue in this race moving forward.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Tim Boyum and Daniel Grimes, thanks so much for your time today. Thank you at home for watching. I'm Josh Robin. We have more news right now here on Spectrum News.
The images from gut-wrenching, and unfortunately we have another round of severe weather in our forecast, this time for parts of the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys. I'm meteorologist Ricky Cody with a look at your weather on the ones. Here we go, level 3 or an enhanced risk of severe storms